Right, hi there everyone. Welcome to Tech Tuesday. Today is a special presentation with our guest presenter Chris Fisher going over data security. Before I hand the mic over to him, I just wanted to touch base on a few things. First off, if you haven't been yet, I'd highly recommend checking out Cornerstone's Resource Center. It gives you access to all of our Tech Tuesdays as well as all the other different podcasts we have going on over here at Cornerstone, the different webinars. You can get there just by going to our website and then clicking on that resources drop down. You'll also gain access to all of our white pages for free. So if you're interested in setting up new business, it's definitely a good link to check out, as well as reviewing different presentations. We also have our Cornerstone 2020 rewards trip, cruising the Caribbean. Any business that's new business that you write between January 1st and December 31st of 2019 will qualify. If you haven't signed up already, I would go ahead, go to our website, and then I believe the registration link is under cornerstone.com/cruise-2020. I'd highly recommend doing that if you're writing new business. And last point, our next Tech Tuesday is also actually special as well. We have our guest our guest presenter from Connective Computing, Jeff, who is a good friend of mine, and he will be covering what to look for when buying a computer on the hardware side, since I did do a presentation a few months ago about that, but not really as a deep dive. And he will cover what to look for when buying a computer spec-wise, and if you should get an Apple or a PC. Without further ado, we'll jump over to Chris from WebTec, and he'll educate you a little bit more than I would be able to on online security. Where is it?
All right. All right, let me go ahead and get this fired up here. All right, so you're seeing the presentation, Tom?
Yes, I am.
All right, perfect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chris Fischesser. I am with WebTec. We help Cornerstone with their website and any website or tech needs on that side. Just wanted to cover what we're going to cover today. I'm going to jump into cloud storage. A lot of people are using it, and the security side of that. We're going to cover email security and website security, and then we'll jump into a Q&A. We'll probably go pretty quick through this, so by all means, save your questions, and I can answer any of those at the end. Yeah, we'll jump right in here. Cloud storage security. As most of you guys have heard of Dropbox, you've heard of OneDrive, Google Drive. There's literally dozens of companies out there that do this, and I've heard a lot of clients across all spectrums of how they feel about the security of these companies. Some people absolutely do not trust that it's in the cloud. Other people, are 100% fine with it and know that, they're doing everything in their power, or at least they trust that they're doing everything in their power to keep everything secure. So how secure is it? Security is pretty tight with these companies. In my opinion, the only way that someone is going to get access to your data that you have held up in the cloud is either A, the government's going to issue a warrant and the company will oblige and give them access to your data. That's one way. Another way is if somebody guesses your password, which is more than likely the most likely way that somebody could technically get into your data inside of cloud storage. I've been in the business for 10, 11, 12 years. I have never seen either of these situations happen. So I think they're both extremely unlikely. But of course, with any password, you want to change it every now and again, and you want to keep it pretty complex. But the other thing, the other good rule of thumb here is just, you don't want to store, let me skip down a point because that's what I'm going to jump into. You don't want to store any confidential information in cloud storage. Like HIPAA or personal identifiable information. It's the same concept as credit cards and whatnot. If you store those, you still have to go through a bunch of extra procedures to make sure that they are kept safe. And I don't know the rules and regulations on cloud storage, but if it's like anything else, more times than not, it's better to avoid that than to have to jump through all the hoops that you have to jump through to store that. And of course, as I mentioned with the government and whatnot, privacy is a big concern with cloud storage. A lot of people think that the big brother is just kind of snooping around, peeking their eyes in on everything. And honestly, that depends on the company, which you can look into, and the philosophy that the company has. Some of them are very anti-government, and they would, quote unquote, never let them in to take a peek. And others, I don't know. I mean, they're never going to openly say that they'll work with the government, for anything, but it is a concern, so if that's something that, is of importance to you, you may want to read into their philosophies and how the company, believes that the government should be involved with the data. Often, I think we're talking about like the rarest of rare situations here, so I don't even think it's a concern. But I did want to just kind of mention that. So overall, just to kind of cover cloud storage in an overview, I personally feel that it's pretty safe, and that you're okay to do it, but I would not store any HIPAA or personal identifiable information up there. And of course, change your password. That is the change your password and keep it pretty complex. Those are kind of the rules of thumbs to live by on those. And as far as like, if I have a company that I recommend, I personally have used Dropbox. I've used Google Drive. I have not used OneDrive, but I think they all kind of operate and go about it pretty much the same. I think Dropbox probably is one of the oldest companies out there. If I remember right, they may have been one of the first to come out with the the software. But anyway, you can't really go wrong with any of them. But like I said, me personally, I've used Dropbox and Google Drive. They both work very similarly in concepts, and they're just a little bit different as far as the software goes. The other thing I guess I should mention is that Google Drive, I think it comes with like a, your Google account and whatnot. I think you get certain storage for free up to a certain amount. Most of them do that, like Dropbox offers a promotion, and OneDrive and Google Drive. So anyway, I'll jump to the next topic, which is email security. Which is a very, very hot topic these days. Of course, with viruses and phishing, as they call it, which phishing is simply people that are, or I guess if you want to call them hackers or whoever they are, that are trying to mimic another company's persona in their email to get you to click on something that ends in a bad action. So maybe most of the time it's like, oh, we've had problems with your account. Please click here to reset your password or something like that. That is by far the most often seen email that you get as far as phishing. But some rules of thumbs to live by as far as email security. Don't open if an attachment does not look familiar and it's not from somebody that you know or recognize. Do not open it. It doesn't matter if it says it's from Google. Doesn't matter if it's from Microsoft. If you did not prompt that attachment to be sent to you, or you don't recognize the name, do not open it. One other thing to keep in mind here too is you can always oftentimes look at the email address. I didn't actually put that in here as a bullet point, but if you look at the actual email address, oftentimes, for example, if they say that the email is from Microsoft, oftentimes their actual email address will not be from @microsoft.com. it'll be something like at like aboutmicrosoft.com or something like that. So that's one way that I kind of determine real quick that it's whether it's phishing or not. If it's an email address that looks reputable, um, you know, then okay, maybe I'll take it a step further to kind of go through my process. Is this a legit email or not? But right away, you can just look at the email address. If it doesn't make sense, or if it's not the actual email address or domain of that company, immediately just kind of put it in the trash, or archive it and don't even look at it. And of course, along with that, as I just mentioned, never enter your password ever for any site unless you prompted that event, like you forgot your password, so you went to the site and requested that to be sent to you. If you did not prompt that email to be sent to you, never ever enter a password. I know that gets said time and time again, but people fall for these all the time. But as far as email security, I think anytime there's any question involved here, just delete it. If it's important, they're going to send it to you again, or they'll say, hey, did you get my email? And you can always go back and look. But with that being said, I guess in theory, the hacker or person who has malintentions could write you that same email. But oftentimes, I mean, if there's any question, I normally just throw it in the trash. Me personally, it's better not to take that risk than to open something that you don't know what it is, or click on a button. Even just clicking on a button and going to a website without entering your password or any of that information can still install, like just by going to a website, they can install like malware for even your browser. So oftentimes they say like Macs can never get viruses. Well, they technically can't, but like Google Chrome, if you use that on Mac or any browser really, they can mess with so many of your settings just by visiting a website that anytime you open your browser, it goes to some foreign search browser instead of Google. You may have had it set to Google before, and now all of a sudden you're seeing that you're going to a different browser. That's happened time and time again. So the bottom line here is don't click on any buttons or anything like that unless you know who it is, what the point of the email is for, if you requested it. Just be very cautious, because it's literally one click, and you can be calling your IT tech guy or taking it up to the Geek Squad to get it fixed and paying a couple $100. And oftentimes, on that note, even getting it fixed and clean like 100%, in my opinion, it's like never clean 110%. There's always some nuances that are left. So sometimes I end up just like rebooting my entire operating system and reinstalling, which is a huge pain. It's just not even worth it. That's my bottom line here with email security. So if you have any questions for that, let me know. It's a very broad topic, so I just touched the surface here. So the next one, which is website security, is one that I'm definitely a specialist at. I could talk for hours about this because it is my specialty. But the easiest way to tell right off the bat if a website is safe to enter information into is by looking up at the top. And with Google Chrome, at least as of right now, they're constantly changing things, but you'll see that they have a lock up here and that it says HTTPS. That S stands for secure or security or something safe with an S. Yeah, that lock up there is what you want to see. If it does not have a lock, you will see this little exclamation point. It'll say not secure. And what does that actually mean? So, it's, without diving too deep into technological terms, I'll throw a hypothetical scenario, which a lot of people probably discuss. Let's say you go to Starbucks. They have a public Wi-Fi there. If you are on Cornerstone's website or Fifth Third, for example, or any of that, it is a secure site. And they use what's called an SSL certificate to encrypt anything that gets sent through their website. So If you went to, for example, the CG Marketing Communications website, this would not be encrypted. Anything you filled out here would not be encrypted. So it would be sent through in plain text, which technically means that if somebody was on that Wi-Fi snooping around and they had the capability to catch data that was in the air, if that makes sense. So if you're sitting at your table, you type all this information in, you hit submit. If that person was a man in the middle, it's called a man in the middle attack, and they were listening for traffic to come across the network, they could easily snag that. And it's in plain text, so anything that's sent through this website, CG Marketing Communications, will be able to be read by him. And so, as you can imagine, it gets more complex. I mean, this is just a contact form, but if you're on a website where there's a login, they definitely get your email address and password. And that. But I mean, most of the time now, it wasn't this way two or 3 years ago, but most websites having a login portal or anything where you enter secure information is going to be secure. You're going to see this HTTPS up here with the lock. And then, of course, on the flip side of things, if you were on Cornerstone's website and you filled out a form or logged in or anything like that, it would come across as a bunch of numbers and text that make no sense to the man in the middle. So he would still be able to see it, but he would have no clue what it says. It's just some random formula that computes, random strings of characters and numbers, and he has no way to decrypt that. So that's the basics of, whether a website is secure or not. And there are, and again, we're just kind of touching the surface of this because we are a little bit limited on time. I could dive into this, like I said, for hours. There are other ways that people could steal information, as you've seen with like Target and those huge corporations. Even though it may be safe to like enter information in through their website, it gets stored in a database somewhere. And technically a hacker could get into that database and steal that information that you once submitted through a website. So is anything technically secure these days? Unless companies have very top of the line IT teams and security teams, more times than not, if a really good hacker wanted to get in, they could get in. That's scary to say, but there are definitely companies out there where I feel are ahead of the game as far as security. Obviously, like a company like Amazon, that's probably a top priority for them, like a #1 priority. But of course, they're probably the #1 target for hackers too. So you got to keep that in mind. With companies like Amazon or any others, what's a hacker's incentive to get in there and steal that information? And with Amazon, obviously, there's a lot. So they're probably going to be targeted a lot, but they're also going to, I feel like Amazon has a big enough budget to where they're going to hire the top security people in the nation that they can. So with as far as some tips for websites, be careful on public Wi-Fi. Make sure that the websites that you're going to are secure. And so and just to kind of hit on that again, so like technically, people say like you shouldn't go to Fifth Third's website, log into your bank account from a public Wi-Fi. I think that's a good rule of thumb to live by. But in theory, since it's secure now, which again, 2, 3, 4 years ago, it was not. Well, I don't know about Fifth Third, but a lot of them were not secure. And so that's where this issue came in. So if you were on public Wi-Fi, you were not on a secure website, people could steal your information who are listening on the network. But nowadays, it's going to be encrypted. So can you check your bank account at Starbucks? I probably still wouldn't do it. I think it's a good rule of thumb, just to make sure that you're on your own network or that you're at a safe network. But in theory, you should be able to check your bank account at Starbucks and be on their Wi-Fi because it's encrypted. So nobody will technically be able to interpret that information that you're sending through that network. But like I said, I personally would probably not. But that's kind of the rule of thumb to live by. Probably a good idea not to, but you can if you really, really need to. Just make sure that you're on a safe website and that everything looks normal. because I won't go into that, but it like if you went over to like, I've seen this when I went overseas and went to Europe or went to Africa or something like that, but technically, like if you're on a public Wi-Fi and it's like a hacker's public Wi-Fi, they could create a page that looks like Fifth Third. So when you go to fifththird.com, you actually pull up a page that they built that looks like Fifth Third that just steals that information as soon as you put it in. You don't see that. You obviously, unless the hacker owned the Starbucks or something like that here in the States, you oftentimes don't see that. But that technically would be a possibility. And that's what I meant by we can talk about this for hours. So again, just touching the surface, I would probably stay off of the public networks when you're accessing like, confidential information. As I mentioned earlier, the industry is definitely moving towards SSL certificates, which is what encrypts the websites. We're probably 3 years into this trend. And actually, Google has mentioned that they will start penalizing websites in their rankings that do not have SSL certificates that should have SSL certificates. So somebody like Fifth Third, who really, really should have one, if they did not have one, they would start penalizing them in the rankings. And they're going to put, at least they've said this, and they've said this for probably about 6 months or a year now. They're going to start making it very apparent in their listings who has SSLs and who does not, when it applies. So if you just have an informational website, technically you may not need an SSL because all you're doing is supplying information to people and nobody's inputting information on your website. But let's say that you have a login portal to your website where you can edit the content, or let's say you have a contact form where people are putting in some identifiable information in there, then in Google's eyes, you need an SSL and you should have one installed on your website. So with that being said, that kind of covers website security. And I think we're about going to be wrapped up here, but my company, again, is WebTec. Here are all of the services that we offer. Feel free to reach out anytime, anyway. Here's our website, phone number. We love just talking about what we do. And of course, as I mentioned, websites are our specialty, but a lot of these other services such as email and cloud storage go hand in hand with what we do. So we don't mind talking about it, but it's definitely, like, cloud storage is not a specialty of mine, but I know enough to be dangerous about it. But websites definitely are a specialty of ours. So with that being said, we'll open it up to questions.
Actually, just before you open it up for questions, you mentioned earlier about cloud storage and HIPAA. I just know from what I do here, if you put any person's personal information on cloud storage, that probably does violate HIPAA, just because you're technically sharing their information with a third-party company. I'd highly recommend just storing it on a secured external hard drive, or just keeping it local on your computer. But like you said before, clouds are pretty secure, so it's kind of up in the air. But go ahead. It looks like we do have one question already in the chat, actually.
Sure. Do you want, I don't know if I could see that.
I can read it off for you. It's
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know if I see any.
it's
I
under
don't know.
the questions drop down, I believe. But it's if you are in a public place and do not log in or use free public Wi-Fi, but your own cell provider service, is that safe?
Yes, but I say that with caution just because I feel like that's going to be the next like targeted area. Right now, cell phones are secure and they are, you shouldn't run into any issues there. Me personally, this is just my personal opinion. I feel like it's going to be the next targeted area of hackers and whatnot. But right now, I think you are good to go on your cell phone anywhere you want, at home, or if you're at Starbucks. But keep in mind, just be aware of when you're on the Wi-Fi and when you're not, So oftentimes, if I am at Starbucks and I am on Starbucks Wi-Fi and I want to do something secure, I will drop the Starbucks Wi-Fi. I'll go to my cell phone signal and do it. I trust that more than I do like a Starbucks Wi-Fi. But like I said, just keep your eye on it, and if you hear anything come across the news or anything like that, um, just keep your eye on it and just be knowledgeable about it. But it's, as far as I know, it's safe right now. But like I said, keep your eye on it.
All right. We do have a follow-up question on that, which is the risk of being hacked because of public Wi-Fi being available versus just being at home? I think it's more of like what the overall like added issues would be versus using like a private network versus a public network, I guess. That's what I'm
Um,
reading it
any
as.
of them can be hacked, like in theory. So like even your home network, if you had a good hacker who wanted to get into your home network, I mean, most people's home networks are not very secure. But again, this comes back to the intentions. Like what's a hacker going to get out of hacking into your network? So at least that's valuable to them. Most home networks are not even that secure, but I obviously would trust my home network over like a Starbucks network. Um, but I always boil it down to what's a hacker going to get out of getting into this network. And so obviously my home network, they're never going to get anything that's worth of any value to them or whatnot. So, my network, in my opinion, is pretty safe. But again, there may be some incentive there for Starbucks, for them to get into that network and hack it, if you will. But I don't know if that answered your question. Let me know. But I always kind of drill it back to what are they going to get out of doing this, and which kind of validates the security meter for me.
All right. Our next one is what about encrypted email solutions? So I think that's more asking like what you'd recommend to use for encryption, or is there any benefit to adding encryption to your email?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because that's actually something I didn't cover. There are actually a growing number of solutions out there, and even Microsoft offers their encryption solution now. Google, I believe, I'm not a huge Google business user, but I believe they came out with their solution. And of course, there's third-party solutions out there that you can use. And they all pretty much follow the same exact process with a little bit of variation there. But for the most part, I think that they're pretty secure. Again, this unfortunately comes back to usernames and passwords oftentimes, because like you'll need to log into the third party software, or you'll need to log into your email to access those secure emails. And again, it's only as good as your password. So I hate to keep coming back to that, but it's not stressed enough. Um, you need to use a strong password. You need to use a safe password. Change it every now and again. But yeah, I mean, so in theory, yes, it's secure until your password is compromised. Then I mean, everything's wide open at that point.
All right. Thank you. We have, I think, one question here that I can answer, and then one other one just got posted about computing. But we had a question about cloud storage with HIPAA. The person in question has a BA agreement with them and is asking that if you have a BA agreement, doesn't it meet HIPAA requirements to use cloud storage or third-party cloud storage? And I believe it does, but I'm no legal expert. I need to check up on that and make sure that it's completely fine and meets HIPAA requirements, but I believe it should. And that's just because you have a extra, legal agreement with them to use their cloud service. And it's definitely safer than local storage unless you can fully remove the hard drive and store it on an external. And then the last question I have so far in the chat for you, Chris, looks like, are the new 5G computers connected to the internet like a cell phone instead of using Wi-Fi more secure? So I guess is a 5G network more secure than a LAN?
Um, I think this comes back to the same concept of cell phone signal versus like a wireless network or a home network. I personally don't know much about the 5G networks on cell phones, but if they operate just like any other cell phone network would, I would say that they're just as secure as the others. And again, I would prefer cell phone network over a public Wi-Fi right now, unless you're on a Wi-Fi that you know and can trust. But yeah, I'd say that the 5G is just as secure as any of the others. It's just a little bit faster. Um, but again, I don't know a ton about the 5G network. But yeah, I think that answers that.
I actually agree completely. I did a lot of research on 5G for, I think it was 2 presentations ago. We do have a recording about 5G up on our website under those resource center links that I was talking about earlier. So I'd highly recommend reviewing that if you want a little bit more information. But 5G is on a completely separate cell network than 4G and 3G. And I know that a lot of people, just because it's so new, are excited to switch over for security reasons. One thing that I did find in my research, 5G doesn't have standard encryption yet. It doesn't have standard security protocols. So 5G versus normal LAN or a 3 and 4G network, I'd prefer to stay on that mobile 4G network. But because 5G is so new, I doubt you'd have many security issues with hackers or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just keep in mind, because they're not encrypted, I mean, there has to be a person in the middle that wants to steal that information. Things can be done unencrypted, and that's perfectly fine. So in this case, I'm almost positive, you would be on your cell phone on the 5G network, you would be communicating with a tower, but there'd have to be somebody in between that connection with a device capable of listening to that connection. And so, as as Tom mentioned, that's pretty rare right now because it's brand new technology. But second of all, somebody would have to have the intention of listening to that and stealing something that's valuable to you. Um, so, in all likelihood, it's probably not going to happen. But again, just providing the information so you guys can make some educated decisions.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for helping us out today, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
The internet is not my area of expertise. I'm more focused on Microsoft suites of Office products. So thank you so much to WebTec for helping us out. Once again, please visit them for web services. It's cincinnatiwebtech.com, and the number should still be displayed on your screen, 513 426 7441. Thank you so much. If we don't
Thank you.
have any other questions, I believe that should be it. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is tlevine@crnstone.com. If Chris wants to share his email address, go ahead. But any question you have for him, I'd be happy to route to him through mine.
Yeah, it's actually just Chris at CincinnatiWebTech.com. So real easy, CHRIS at CincinnatiWebTech.com. Like I said, we love talking about this stuff, so feel free to shoot any questions you have over.
All right. Thanks to everyone again for attending, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thanks, guys.